with somebody.
Sorry, I
Some of
forgot
it's-
everybody.
Some of it's just so obscure and
Yes.
and yet interesting. And I just think, oh my, really? Anyway, so I find it's really wonderful to do.
Yeah, it's very
And-
gritty, and I think that's what a little bit what Lucy and Geraldine were describing. It's like what color is a woman's cycle, and how big is a man's penis, and
Yeah.
what does a chicken look like, if it's this. And I mean, it's just like the raw details of
Mhm.
life, really unfiltered, and it's a fascinating window into rabbinic life, and the living experience of how Jewish law relates to people. I mean, it's such a different world lens than Torah, which is kind of this, mythic series. Talmud is really almost like a sitcom of rabbinic life, mixed in with these, genius people who are able to reference within the Talmud itself. It's like the ultimate internet, where these scholars are able to hyperlink sources backwards and forwards, and generationally, and across continents.
Yeah.
So it becomes this repository for this global dialogue, over 300-ish years in two different countries, about what it meant to live with Jewish legal code, and the stories that came out of that. So that's the halacha and the agada, those two vocab words that I just want to make sure that you get. The legal term is halacha, how to walk, literally, and agada, the narrative, which, Pesach is coming, and we're about to read the Haggadah, which is from that same root of to tell a story. Okay, so this story of Beloved Rabbi was when I met Dr. Calderon. She came and basically did bibliodrama of this story right in front of us. And it was like, there was not a sound heard. And you can probably get a sense of that, particularly in her unpacking of the narrative, and the palpability of both of the characters, sense of self and yearning. So does somebody want to just read this out loud? And just for the recording, I'll just state again the two questions that I'm kind of framing tonight around, which is, how does Torah transform us on multiple levels? And what is the role of Eros in the study of Torah, and how we relate to our families and partners? Okay. Mark, will you take us through the Ketubot text?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Beloved Rabbi, Rav Rahumi used to learn in Rava's yeshiva in the town of Mahoza. He was accustomed to coming home every Yom Kippur Eve. One day he lost himself in his learning. His wife was awaiting him. Now he's coming, she thought. He did not come. She grew weak. She let a tear fall from her eye. At that moment, Rav Rahumi was sitting on the roof. The roof collapsed underneath him, and he fell to his death.
Yeah, and this comes from the Babylonian Talmud. That's the B right below that text, and the Masechet, the tractate on Ketubot, on wedding documents. So you can already kind of draw, a little dotted line between this story and what it might say about, what do we promise when we become engaged or become married? So comments, so totally opening it up to what struck you, what surprised you, what annoyed you.
Rabbi, I thought this was a very sad story myself. And he was just, Rabbi Rahumi was just singularly focused in his life, and just completely, basically completely left his wife out of the story. He didn't even show up after his time at the, after for Yom Kippur. Gosh, I don't know. You think just way too much emphasis on study, and there's no balance here, and just disappointing in that way. That's how I felt about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But balance seems to be, I'm sorry, I raised my hand.
Go ahead, Marcia, and then Janine.
But balance seems to be an issue that's kind of a through line so far. And at this point, I'm wondering if there can be balance for those who study Torah at that level, because I think they are taken over. And I don't think he was selfish, really. I think he had feelings for his wife when they were married and in their early years. The story seems to indicate that they were happy.
Mhm.
But I think when he got to the academy, he was really
Ruby?
taken over.
Yeah, I think taken over is a good way to describe it. Janine.
The theme of imbalance came up for me also. And I thought, Rumi, please, that's just my dog, I'm sorry. I thought that he did all the loving and he did all the learning. And in the relationship, that was the imbalance. Like, it was very polarized. And I actually think that can happen in relationships. I don't think that's uncommon at all, that there's the one who's the more you could say intellectual or whatever you want to, and the one who's the more feeling and loving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it also speaks to opposites being drawn together in terms of there's a kind of balance. One person carries the thing for the other person. That's not brought out here, but that's something that came up for me in the story. And the other thing is, I think the woman is so psychically connected to him that the tear comes at the moment that he dies. It's just so, there's such a deep connection there.
Mm. That's interesting, just to read the tear comes. So you're saying her tear didn't cause the roof to collapse. The tear was actually in response to his
They're
death.
so connected. She's like feeling it as it happens. That's what
Yeah.
came up for me around that. I said, oh, this is just so amazing. That was my sense of it. That was my take on it.
Yeah. And I had the image of actually the tear breaking the roof. It's so interesting.
That's I think going back to what Lisa, you can interpret these stories in so many ways.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Annette. We can hear you.
I know, I forgot to unmute. I'm on an iPhone. I don't have reception out here where I live. So anyways, to me, her strength was so much a part of their relationship. And she kept looking for him and she kept hoping and she kept going to all these places where maybe this was going to be him, or maybe this sound. And she finally gave up. And it was her giving up that led to the tear. And I agree. It was like a moment of interaction between the two. And I don't know that it caused the roof or the roof caused the tear. I think it was kind of simultaneously. done.
Yeah, thank you. Noah.
I didn't get as much time to study this, but just hearing it right now, I keep thinking how many times in the Torah it said that people die, people die, people die, and obviously they don't. Adam and Eve didn't die. So I don't think he really died. I think that what makes him alive is to study Torah, and he was kind of disconnected that way. And seeing her tears, he kind of came down from above her to try to be with her, but he no longer had the same life in his soul as he does when he's above, because he prefers to be in the spiritual realm instead of the physical realm. But that her tears called him in, and her sadness and grief is that even when she can call him to her, he is still somehow distant from her because he's always being this esoteric spiritual person. So I just think that she's playing off the fact that a lot of times in Torah it says that people die and they don't. So what does that mean in real life when you're living that out?
Wow, awesome, Noah. I'd never quite connected the topography. I really think that's a powerful addition with this notion of he literally came down. It reminds me also in the Talmud of the story of Rabbi Gamliel, who, lives on this horse, practically riding around town, and then gives somebody an insult and is forced to get off his horse and come, and walk on the ground. So I think it's really powerful, that description, because why on earth was he on the roof anyway? It's not like he's a fiddler or something, it's just a kind of a weird, precarious, like you think about a roof. Yeah.
And at that time, there was such a difference with women not being able to study. It left them completely separated away from each other in life, because, studying Torah has just become this center focus point that is sort of what I and my life pivot off of now. And if I could never have that because I was a woman, then I would be always I would always be below and not as connected.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Geraldine, just for 1 second, I just want to get a couple more lines of the text on the table, just so that we can really stay connected. And one line that I wanted to read, because you notice, just to point out, we've been talking about who is the man a lot, and who is the character of the male just in our conversation here. I mean, it's just interesting, the balance. And so from her perspective, she asks on page 32, in the third big paragraph at the bottom, she says, do I still exist when no one sees me? Sometimes I feel as if I'm entering and exiting a transparent house. So just a read into who she was relative to him, or maybe even on her own. Yeah, Geraldine.
Oh, yes, I think I was really struck by, well, it partially relates to what Noah said, the gender imbalance, or the division between genders in this, that she had a world that she could occupy, and he had one that he occupied, and they didn't overlap. And so she was denied that, and he fell in love with Torah. And she said somewhere that when he comes home in the middle of the night, I could smell the Babylonian Torah in his mouth, a scent like spiced apple cider. He would come home drunk with Torah. So it was like consuming him, or he was consumed, absorbing, I guess is a better word. And in that plane, which was denied to her, and I just kept thinking about that, how this would have been different if they could both be in that space, do the same things. Everything she talks about herself is women's work, women's life, cleaning, the kitchen being spotless, all of that, which he did not partake in.
Right. And she continues, she quotes Torah over and over and over, which is so fascinating, because she knew that realm. It was in her, it was part of her language. She would walk around reciting these verses. So it's also interesting that she says just on the bottom of that same paragraph that Geraldine read, the sweet melody of his learning was the rival with whom I would ultimately have to contend.
Mhm.
It was competing with me for my husband's soul. So it's interesting, yeah, what she knew and what she didn't, what they talked about. I mean, why on earth wouldn't they share that? Yeah, Marcia.
I just wanted to say that it was really ironic to me that the way things worked, he had to ask her permission to go to the academy. And so I looked at the ending a little different in that because he was not coming back and she felt that complete, he's deserted me feeling, he's gone, I've lost him. And she cried. I saw him falling as her withdrawing her permission.
Uh-huh.
And the Ruth as like that foundation that she gave him to do what he wanted was her permission. And she took all the hardship that caused because she loved him. She didn't resent it. She adored him. He was her beloved. But when she finally realized that he had left her, that he would never be back, then her heart was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And when that tear fell, it was her saying, I did this to myself, basically. I gave you that permission. Well, I take it back.
Mm.
And then his foundation was gone. Her love and her support was that foundation for him, and it was gone.
Yeah.
That was just my take on that part.
One of the names, you're just reminding me, in Talmud and in rabbinic literature for a woman is a bait. A woman is referred to as a house. So what you're describing is really very very strong image of, she took out her bite, she took out the house. Yeah, Annette.
They actually say that on page 36. And I was going to just point out, like, he does have remorse that he didn't make it. He really wanted to go and see her, but he kept entrapping his own self. And it says there, he remembers what the sages always say. A man's wife is his house, is his home. He imagines for a moment that she is carrying him on her back. I thought that was really intriguing. It's very much in line with what's being said here. As in a dream, he sees her face, he hears the words of his teacher. A man should always take care not to deceive his wife because she is easily hurt and her tears flow freely. He is not horrified. He knows that he did not take care and that he has hurt his wife. If she should shed a tear and cry out in pain, her prayer would be accepted. So, I wonder what that prayer would have been.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leah.
Some other things that caught my attention, besides some that have been mentioned, was just in the beginning when she was expecting, by being a Rebbitzin, it was going to give her a higher status. And so first when she was young, she was reveling in that. But then later on, it's talking about how she's so jealous of the other women who are, swelling, with pregnancy, like things weren't already going the way she had thought that they were going to go. And then it also caught me when she was thinking about her mother would be so proud of her, but wondering, does her mother get to study now? Showing her yearning to learn, because she really wants to learn Torah, and she doesn't. And it's like she's saying, "I guess I have to wait till I'm dead," which I thought was just interesting. And then of course the line you talked about, like, "Do I still exist?" But then on page 33, there is a premonition that he's going to die. I mean, they're already telling us, whether it's literal or metaphorical, but one who vows to be far from his wife without, well, he got her permission, but I still interpret it as he's still risking his life not being with his wife, who is the home. So to me, it felt like a premonition, even though he got her permission. It's like she didn't have a choice. She had to give the permission in her eyes, is how I interpreted it.
Definitely. And if we, I want to kind of weave these two stories a little bit as we shift into the second one.
Oh, and just, I'm sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but that she felt that he was ashamed of her.
Yeah.
And I thought that touched my heart too. So I was really watching her through the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that she knew he did not have another lover, even though her friends thought he did. Because there was no smell on his clothes. Now I'm done.
Yeah, the writing here is so visceral. I just, even the last of the first tiny paragraph, she says, like, imaginary labor pains, that's the experience that she's having, this kind of ghost of all of these layers of yearning and longing and
beautiful. Yes.
So powerful. So and just to point out, she talks about Rehumi as in Aramaic, referring to love and beloved, but in Hebrew, it's also rechem is also a womb, which I was surprised that she didn't just straight out say, because that again plays into this whole, she wanted it. She wanted him bad. And it had to do with, multiple desires of intimacy, but one of them very much was to, had to do with her rechem, had to do with his name, had to do with her womb. So the other kind of bridge I want to draw between these two is the use of space. So we've talked a little bit about how he was on the roof, and where in the next story is the scholar when he has the encounter?
The garden.
On the earth.
Yeah, on the earth, in the garden. Yeah, so these are both kind of unexpected spaces for Eros to really erupt, at least between man and woman. And as we've talked about before, in the Beit Midrash, there was plenty of Eros flying around between these men. So it was almost like these two different realms of sensuality and sexuality. In the Beit Midrash, they could express their sexuality in one way, and it was only outside that other types of sexuality could emerge. And to draw a parallel, also we have this experience of Moses in the Torah, that every time he's in the burning, in the tent of meeting, it's he's got the lover, and the lover is God. And we very rarely hear Tzipporah and yet alone her sexual needs. But it's just an interesting kind of parallel of the tent of meeting, the study hall, these kind of spaces of intimacy for only a few, elite spaces of intimacy. And there was one other connection I wanted to draw. Oh, just to mention Rabbi Akiva, who also had a similar narrative of an adoring wife who kind of propped him up to be able to go off and learn. And, Rabbi Akiva became, one of the greatest teachers of all time, came back with thousands of students eventually, and doesn't even recognize Rachel, his wife. And she ends up kind of crawling to him through the crowd. So what is sacrificed in order to become these scholars is tremendous for everybody. So let's go to and just a tiny note on Yom Kippur, all of this taking place Erev Yom Kippur. I can't kind of skip over that detail because as we know, Yom Kippur, there is no sex. So it's like this the end of the tunnel, or whatever the metaphor would be, like under the wire. It's then or never, because we are said to, in some ways, die on Yom Kippur. It's not clear if we will come through Yom Kippur even alive. It's so much. It's so rich. Okay, so
It's also the time. Can I?
Sure.
Yom Kippur is also when we make peace with each other, and by that way we come to God.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And so literally for him to have come home could have been a huge repair. Is that what you're thinking, Joan?
Yes, the way to God is through human love, and
Yeah.
he missed that great opportunity.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So Libertina, to somebody, Joan, do you want to read just the text itself from Kiddushin, from the tractate of, these are the tractate of marriage laws.
I don't have it.
Oh, okay. No worries.
I can't read it.
I was just
Sorry.
excited to
Okay.
hear your voice. No worries.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Maxine, do you want to read it? We're on page 39.
39, the very beginning of it.
Yeah, just the text itself from the Talmud.
Yeah. Rabbi Yabarashi used to prostrate himself to prayer and say, "May the merciful one save me from the evil impulse." One day his wife overheard him. She said, "Given that for several years he has abstained from me, why is he saying that?" One day he was studying in his garden. She adorned herself, passed by, and came before him. He said to her, "Who are you?" She said, "I am Libertina. I returned today." He propositioned her. She said to him, "Bring me that pomegranate from the top of the tree." He jumped up and brought it to her. When he came home, his wife was lighting the stove. He went and sat inside it. She said, "What is this about?" He said, "Such and such happened." She said to him, "It was I." He said to her, "But in any case, my intention was to transgress."
It's so powerful to hear the story again after reading her, expansion of it, because you can really see the gaps. It's like in Torah as well, right? The gaps, the pregnant gaps that they then build midrash around. So what do you all notice?
One thing I love about this story is she says to him, "Bring me that pomegranate from the top of the tree." And, what is that pomegranate? Is that the laws of the Torah? Like we know, is that bring me your learning? Is that just, I'm going to give you a task just to kind of bust your balls? Or like, it was like so amazing, that line. I love that line.
Totally.
But a pomegranate must have some meaning. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, pomegranate represents the laws, the 619 laws in the Torah. So it represents Torah, like all of the bring me the whole Torah. That's what she said to him. Bring me the whole Torah. And he jumped up and brought it to her, but he never recognized that that's who he brought it to, which is so funny to me.
Yeah.
And then when she, kind of does the gotcha moment, it was me. He's like, "Well, it doesn't matter in any way. In any case, I was going to transfer." Like, it's such a weak excuse. It's just so funny that I just think that, for these women in both these stories, I think, let them go. Find somebody better. These guys, something is wrong with these guys. They're not even good Torah scholars, honestly.
Right. I know. I love that she said, what did she say? Let me in, I want you in on a secret. Like he wasn't all that great or whatever. Yeah. Either one of them. Yeah.
Either of them.
Yeah. And pomegranates are also a symbol of fertility. So she's saying to him,
"Give me children, give me your sperm,"
Yeah. 613 seeds, so yeah, she wants it all. Yeah. And these two stories, there's, you know, a unique relationship to the home. In this one, he also, you know, kind of discloses it's only when she's not there does he like to be in the home. And I felt that in both of these stories that, you know, the woman kind of lurked almost. I mean, it was her nest. And neither of the men, there was something outside, you know, that they had spilkus or whatever it was, but they were definitely different realms.
She was in her corner all the time.
Yeah.
And he was even sleeping somewhere else on nice days.
Right.
In
Yeah,
the
that's a
end.
good point.
And if you don't think he gave into that impulse before he met Libertina, think again, because he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there he
He
was.
wasn't faithful to her. That was obvious.
Right. That he was lying naked on the floor, you know,
Right.
naked on the ground. I mean,
He
stripped
was
of his.
wallowing in it, just
Yeah.
wallowing in it, literally. Like,
Marsha, I
I
want
feel
you.
so bad for this thing I know I'm about to do again any minute now. Yeah.
Leia.
Or
Yeah,
because he's
please.
naked on the floor, my first image was that he had been masturbating instead of having sexual relations with his wife, and that was the trend, also a transgression, because he wasn't using the sperm to create children.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would he be naked? You know, why would he strip himself naked and lay on the ground unless he was masturbating? That's just what I was thinking. But
Yeah.
what do I know? But that came up for me.
Yeah. He was watching porn on his app. You know? I mean, seriously, I think, yeah. I think there is that kind of there's the flip side of Eros, which is that kind of forbiddenness and yeah, the shadow almost of sexuality and sensuality. That is the pushing against all the time. I mean, I definitely even thought, again, with Yentl in mind, but like, remember how horrible those young people felt, you know, when they would become so enticed by their learning and by the sense of one another, and, you know, his shame in wanting Yentl, you know, I mean, it's a, you know, in my study of Torah, I definitely can relate to the seduction of learning. It is a sea in which it becomes addictive to swim in. I haven't had that experience since it was in rabbinical school, but I totally remember I would stay at the Beit Midrash until 8 o'clock at night just to keep learning. You don't even need to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved on the top of 41, what was it? The rabbi had set her mind at ease, or at least diminished the pain, like dirt swept hastily into the corner of the room, but now the dirt was visible again. Like, this line alone paints such a powerful image of, and if you're not familiar, you know, even in today, contemporary times, people would go to their rabbi who was what's called a paskin, an adjudicator of law for everything under the sun. And so she had gone to him asking, you know, basically, should I get a divorce? How do I handle that he's not sleeping with me? Because it is a law. You have to satisfy your spouse. You have to have sex. You know, roommates just, it doesn't fly. And so she was also concerned because, you know, would she have to ask for a get? Would she have to ask for a divorce? Yeah, there was something, I love the description of her going into the market and buying those, you know, sexy clothes or whatever, I must say. I
The eye
remember,
makeup. Yeah.
yeah, I remember being in Syria, and I've traveled to a lot of crazy places, so I'll just put that out there. But I remember being in Syria in the market in the shuk, in their, souk, they call it, and going by this tiny little shop. And I looked inside, and there were all these women wearing their hijab, and they were buying like outrageous underwear. They were like totally like buying these, lingerie that, I'd never seen anything like that in my life. And again, it's that polarity, of what we all yearn for, what's underneath. We just finished Purim. It's that same, who are we really? And the power that was unleashed in her. I just thought that was awesome. It's kind of like the pomegranate thing, Lucy. Just, she really took off running.
Yeah, she had all the knockout punches for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And the stove, what do you all make of the stove? Like, what imagery came up? What did you think was going to happen to him, or why he got in there? Or
Rabbi, I have a thought on that.
yeah.
He felt chagrined about her exposing him, and so he just arbitrarily decides to go sit in the oven, which is the central part of the house where she has all the power.
Huh.
And so it was his way of trying to get around being exposed.
Interesting. Yeah, Marcia.
My take on it was he knew he'd gone a step too far in saying he was gonna transgress anyway. What the heck? And I think he knew he overstepped, so he knew he needed to be punished to get back in her good graces. He apparently just sticks his legs in the stove and gets some burns, and then she immediately runs to get the ointment to make it all better. And I'm just sitting there like, he worked that out, got out of that corner. I really like men, by the way. It's not that, it's these guys. Okay, I really
Hey.
like you guys.
I hear you. Yeah,
but
and it's
these
an
guys
archetype.
not so much.
It's an archetype too. It could be any gender at some level. It's who becomes completely consumed in a relationship. And then Lucy, and then Leah.
Was he trying to camouflage the scratches on his body and the smell of the woman and his disheveled clothes and hair by jumping in the stove?
Yeah, great question. Very dramatic. Some take a shower, others jump in the stove. Mark, I like watching your face.
One of the things I think is so interesting is that the rabbis were in these stories really were, in some ways, these stories are parables. They're teaching stories. And they recognize, just like you said, Rabbi, the Torah learning was seductive, and the communal life of the yeshiva is seductive. And they recognize that the culture revered the Torah scholars to the extent that the Torah scholars could easily not follow, the laws, really, which, and the ways of keeping their families, following the family law to procreate. And I think that they loved these stories because these stories were easy to understand. So it's obvious that, this was not right. in both of these stories. They were exploiting the marital relationship, and it was not good. It was not holy. And this is the rabbis, of the Talmud, this was their way of telling the men this, in such a way that, they could easily understand, and in supporting women. Even though there's a part of us, I think, from where we are, that it's just like, oh my gosh, just shake these guys. But, at that time, a woman and her home was so dependent on the man. And if you didn't have the man, it was far worse for you than anything these women were experiencing. You could have no home and no clothing and no food. Literally, you would be destitute the way we might see, a elderly homeless woman, with a little bag of something on the street. So it was important not to sort of shame the scholars, and because culturally I don't think that would have been okay, but it was also important to let them know the right behavior, correct behavior. And these stories do that really well, because they're kind of funny and silly, and I think they're easy to understand both for men and women.
Yeah, teaching stories. Thank you for that, Leah.
The ending caught me, caught my heart, of how, sad, I guess sad, I'll just use the word sad for both of them, because first he's not going to confess because he thinks all this stuff's going to happen, but she's listening calmly. So she's giving him a doorway. And even though it says he knew, so it wasn't like it went over his head. He knew this was his opportunity for love, even redemption, but he refused it. And I found that interesting, that he was just going to hold that, no, I transgressed. Like, I'm not accepting you as my wife. I'm not coming back to you. And so first she has her wrist, her bracelet on, and then she takes it off. To me, it was like, what's the word I'm looking for? But resigning that I guess this is the truth, that it doesn't matter what she does to entice him. He's not opening up to her. He's closed to her. And I thought that was sad. That's how I interpreted it. Just because he had the opportunity to go back to her. I mean, she totally was welcoming him with open arms in this scene. And she anointed his legs. She took care of him in a loving manner. There was no, what did you do? It was like, I'm here for you. And it was like, no, I don't want you. It was sad. That's how I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated the way on that, guess it's third to last paragraph, right before what you're describing, Leah, which is just kind of like, I can't even go there. I was interested, she responds, it was I, and then what Dr. Calderon did with that. So it was I, as if to say, don't worry, you slept with your legally wedded wife. You are not guilty of death by fire. But the subtext of her statement is, it was I. All that potency and desire and longing came from me. I arranged it all. And that's, and again, I think we hear about, Tamar and Judah and that same kind of, the power of prostitution is not, it's unclear whose hands it's really in. I just had never thought of, her igniting, just her igniting him. I mean, it makes sense, but I'd never seen it. Yeah, Noah.
I'm just going to bring in, having lived in various closets in my life, that what room would there be in the world back then for anybody who was homosexual or celibate, that they didn't even have a sexual desire? That would be another reason to bury yourself in Torah and to find another excuse to be away from your wife. So I don't know, because I didn't get to read the story at this point, but I don't know if there's any insinuation that, but just thinking of other reasons why people don't feel any attraction to their partner? It could be they are a different sexual orientation entirely. And how does that play out in life? And what do you do with that?
Yeah, so important. Really, really important. John.
Yeah, yes, I think we should also mention this one line on page 43. It's the last paragraph.
Mhm.
When Ruth Calderon talks about it, and that is it possible to identify in Rabbi Haya the dread of habit and routine that is part of any long-term marriage and sexual relationship?
Mhm.
And that ebb and flow is not something you would understand unless you'd experienced it. So it's just could have been a factor in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and she points it out, and again, I hadn't thought of it, but on that following page on 44, in the Talmud, again, it describes, if you ride a donkey, you come home once a week. If you ride a camel, you come home once every 30 days. But then she says this, the schedule is revolutionary, as Lucy points out. I mean, it truly was revolutionary, the ketubah, in the time it was written, but it lacks the allure of the forbidden. Which is, I don't know if anybody has kind of followed Esther Perel, but she's, a kind of leading giant in this realm of Eros. She comes from an incredible background of Holocaust surviving parents, and she's like internationally leading this kind of conversation around, I think it's called marriage, a captive marriage or something, about how, what's possible actually in marriage at all, with this kind of primal desire for, the forbidden, the lively, the, non-routine, and how is it that, marriages can survive at all without that, or partnerships, whatever it may be. It's so powerful. She's really doing incredible work. I'm sure she knows. These ladies must know each other. Anyway, it's 8:30. Just a last note about his name, of course, Rabbi Chia, who meaning who gives life. That a person who gives life, which is, again, kind of like a rubbing in of what kind of life are you giving life to? So for next time, it'll be our fourth conversation, and we'll look at the next two stories, the return, and then the long-awaited drum roll, A Bride for One Night. So I'm really excited to go there with you, and thank you all so much for your awesome just conversation and enjoyment of these stories.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was a very great pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for even offering this class.
Oh, my total
I
joy.
think everybody's definitely enjoying it.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Oh.